So Eli, for people who aren't so familiar with your music, do you want to give us the 10-cent tour of kind of how you got into it from childhood, really, I suppose?
Yeah. So I was kind of always into music. My father um was a jazz head, played bass in bands when he was younger, and that always kind of remained part of his life. And so I was listening to jazz from a young age, and I started playing saxophone when I was I think 8 years old.
Wow.
Um and then, growing up in the 90s, got turned on to a lot more kind of contemporary sounds. It felt like jazz was a bit stale at that moment, but acid jazz was happening, and I got into hip hop and trip hop and via jazz, and from there found dance music like jungle and house and everything. And so just like being kind of like a nerdy music lover in middle school, like to and another big piece of it is that we would spend summers in the UK. So my father,
Oh,
also by my father, who's a physics professor, we would go to the UK every summer to for him to work with his collaborator at Oxford. And so I would be up late listening to whatever I heard on the radio. Being like Radio One mixes, being like pirate radio, just being like, what are these sounds? Um,
yes. Did you
started
not
buying.
hear a lot of that stuff in the US then?
We did not like, electronic music was not like a thing in the same way. It was not something you would hear on the radio at all. I think the raves were already happening from the early 90s, but it was a very underground, and I was still really young. And so yeah, to be able to do that and then go to like HMV and like buy a magazine like Mixmag, or at the time Music, Muzik magazine, and like they had a CD on the front with all like the whatever the hot sound was at that moment, and like to read the reviews, and I could buy the records there. And so I was, enamored with like this culture very, very early on. Um, and but just like, I really just like this feeling of like I need to go. Where can I go hear this? Where can I go to a rave? Where can I experience this in person? So then finally, like it was freshman year of high school, and I had a friend whose older sister was in art school in college, and was taking him to raves already. So I snuck out my parents' house, told him I was sleeping at a friend's house, and I went to a rave in New Hampshire, like about an hour and a half away from where I lived in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And that was it. I'd been kind of like curious about what DJs did and like how it all fit in, especially more from like a hip hop perspective with scratching. And then I just like saw it at a party, and
That was it.
that was it. I was like, this is
What I
this is
wanted to do.
all I ever wanted to do in my life.
And I mean, we grew up in Sheffield, obviously with a big dance scene and Gatecrasher and all that stuff. Although I'd moved to London by that time, but we were at the start of the kind of electronic music dance revolution. Really, we're very influenced by soul music as well, from the 70s. So I feel an empathy with with what inspired you. But you're coming at it from a much younger perspective. I've been, as I say, I've been listening to your music all day, and it's like, crikey, this sounds like stuff I'd make now.
That's cool.
Remixes, uh, which shows that you're kind of ahead of the game, really. Well, I was ahead of the game because you weren't even born then, but
Where do you think that as like ravers or like as people who come together, like there's something really special about dance music events, raves especially, like that spirit of like communal, we're all in this together. It's not necessarily there's rules, they're not necessarily, in its purest form, you're not even buying a ticket, you're just showing up with a bunch of other people. And like that's something that is so unique and powerful about electronic music, about dance music. And that's why I think like whatever age you are, if you've experienced that feeling, there's a thread that connects all of us.
That's absolutely correct. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that sense of togetherness that music brings that we all feel through all the different ages and stages of our life. And Soul Clap has been for our friendship group and that wider network from Burning Man to Miami to Detroit, back to London. I just remember so many times whenever you're driving from the club to the after party, if you're at the after party, Soul Clap Mix was on because it will take you on that journey. It's always the perfect music for whatever vibe is going on, whether it's like party or chilling. It was just, and it still is. It's
I think the key to it is he has a real deep appreciation of a melodic core, but it's got really obviously danceable beats behind.
I got to shout out my partner Charlie, who's
of course, yes, to Charlie.
He's the one. He's devoted a lot of his time to becoming a great keyboard player and really getting to be a master of the synths, and like a lot of those melodies are coming from his work in the studio as well. And so like that connection happened with a similar thing, that we were both teenage ravers in the Boston area, and we started by mutual friends DJing together at just like friends' houses. And by 2001, we're like, let's work on a project together. And that's when Soul Clap was actually born. And got serious about making music in like the later 2000s. And it really took off from there.
What a force.
Yeah. I mean,
you're in high vibrations.
You're highly collaborative as well, aren't you? I mean, there's lots of collaborations with different singers, different artists, some more equal 50-50 than others, I suppose.
And then, what you were saying earlier when you were younger about going to Mixmag, getting your inspiration for the music back then, that would probably, I guess, have been the mecca for you in terms of where you would get your music motivation from. And then fast forward to current day, where Mixmag has named your label Soul Clap one of the most influential disco labels in the last decade. Yeah. So that must have felt pretty good.
Pretty amazing. I mean, like the amount of like bucket list things, or things I'd never even imagined, just like being a kid, like DJing, because I, was so excited by it. So then actually, like, we were on a Mixmag cover. Like, we did a DJ Kicks mix, a Fabric mix, like, so many of these things. Collaborated with people like Louis Vega, George Clinton, like people that were just like, my musical North Stars. To be able to do all that has been, I'm so grateful that was the course. I never even imagined that was like the path that could happen.
Interestingly, I'm currently working on an electro-funk album, and I know you did an E-funk album.
Mm-hmm.
I was listening to it, and it's inspired me actually, because I'm thinking I've kind of got my bucket list of artists that I'm kind of basing it around, which I think actually has fallen a little bit out of fashion in the since they were famous in the 80s, and that's why I know.
Who are some of those artists?
Well, you see, it's it started with I was thinking how brilliant Roger Troutman was, and how that and the Gap Band and Cameo and etc. They're really more popular artists that were in the actual charts as well as the dance charts, because that had a big influence on Heaven Sent Tune when we were starting. That's what we were dancing to. But the more kind of hypnotic kind of 10-minute 12-inch singles, that these guys used to do, which are just purely for the dance floor. Funkadelic, of course, I was lucky enough to work with Bootsy Collins, and they are like, I quoted them as an influence right from the outset. But lots of soul and lots of dance. There's loads on the list. I mean, Prince, obviously, to a certain extent. But I'm not of that dance scene, you see. I love it. But I'm from that kind of everyman scene, you know. I like. No, I love it. It's a big part of what influenced what we did. But I everything I do in art and music is consciously aiming at the absolute mainstream, but trying to do it intelligently and with heart and authenticity. And I think to a certain extent, what you do is the same. What happened? You think I'm talking bollocks? I don't know.
No, I think it's like it's this idea that the music could be enjoyed by anyone, right? It's not like limiting. It's not, you're not limiting who could enjoy the music by like trying to do it a certain way or like trying to make it as esoteric or like underground as possible.
Yeah.
I think like for us, for me, it's like there's definitely a like DIY-ness to it, right? Like I really think that's so important. Independence in the music industry, being able to build that is like a really powerful tool to have. But that being said, like the actual music being something that like, you know, your grandma could enjoy also is really important.
I think
it should feel good for everybody.
Such a great groove.
Yeah.
Kind of thing, yeah. It was interesting. I was talking to Fatboy Slim on an interview that I did for my other podcast, and I was amazed. And I suppose everybody knew it at the time, but I didn't. I was amazed that all those classic records were so popular on every fucking advert as well. You know, were all made in his bedroom essentially, and I'm like, but didn't you ever like take it into a big studio and break it out into different? So no, just on my, sequencer. This was before DAWs, really. It was just on samplers, and that really made me reassess that entire period of dance music. I thought that this is the birth of bedroom production, and sorry, the reason I'm asking this is, how did you, from a production point of view, I'm going to get onto the more esoteric stuff in a minute.
We always get onto the more esoteric stuff, actually.
But from a production point of view, do you have a big fuck off studio with loads and loads of synths and stuff, or is it a more compact thing? Is it all in the box? What would it look like?
So definitely over the years, I've collected some synths. Once again, like Charlie, like has like, you know, got addicted to buying synths, so he's got many of them. For me, I'm like, I like to be a little more modular with it, I guess, like being able to move things around. And like as I've gotten more into, and as we talk about the more esoteric stuff too, like how to bring nature in and like be creative in different ways. Like I think it's more and more important for the studio to be able to move around. And like when we were making a lot of the early soul clap music for a long time, and even now, like a lot of it is done in Ableton.
Nice, right?
Ableton Live, like that's like the mother brain of all of it. You can do so much. So even if I'm like recording a drum machine or a synthesizer, it's into Ableton, and then usually like a lot of editing and processing happens in the box too.
Right.
And so I think like that is the essence also of dance music, right? Is like once drum machines and synthesizers became affordable and people just started buying them, that allowed for the new music to be born in Chicago and Detroit initially, right? Like that was it. So I think that goes back to the independence thing, right? Like not needing a big studio. And I think often like the most exciting dance music is from younger producers who don't have access to a big studio or don't have all the gear. They're just like using whatever tool they have at their fingertips. And then as they get more and more, and this has happened, I think, with myself and Soul Club as producers too, it's like as you get more and more, sometimes it doesn't actually, you lose maybe the essence of, it's harder to find the essence of what makes the music so so special, you know? So it's like more tools, more studio doesn't necessarily mean more creativity.
I completely agree. I've reduced my studio down to literally 2 outboard analog synths now, which were the first 2 I ever used. Everything else is, I'm not the world's biggest fan of just digital, but I'm also not a fetishist about. To me, they're just tools. It's like, are you going to write a better melody on a Stradivarius or a cheaper kind of Yamaha concept?
Oh, I can totally relate to that because I'm the same with my instruments too. I've been 15 years of gathering all the most incredible, antique, beautiful sound healing tools from all around the world. And I've been through that phase where I've brought all the gear to the gig, all the bolts, all the gongs, too much stuff. But now, as I progress into the next phase of my evolution, where I'm kind of on the wind down, I bring less and less gear to the gigs.
Wind down.
Well, I'm on the way into like my fertility window, so I don't really want to be logging
my
particular
God.
jams of instruments all around the world.
Banging it out to try and get a baby, yeah?
Of course, that's the best part about it. But we just played in Berlin last weekend, and it was the first time in 15 years where we didn't bring any instruments. It was a recorded piece played on this spatial 4D surround sound system. So we went out there, hand luggage only, and just listened to our piece and represented, but didn't bring any instruments. And it's just so interesting. We've turned that corner. And so less and less now you can still present that sound and that effect without having 100 kilograms of gear.
Oh, I the lines do you see to all that stuff, right?
Oh, you were the first. You were the first ever electronic acoustic collaboration we ever did.
Well, we did they used to do quite large scale kind of gong bath, resonant events. And I said, why don't we do a hybrid of the 3D sound system and some electronic composition with the live stuff that they were doing? And it was really good, wasn't it? It was so wild. Because the people couldn't figure out what was real and what wasn't, because when they got their eyes closed and on the yoga mat, and it's like she's wandering around, like resonating stuff all over the place and thingy poles and all that. But there's also this big 3D sound system, which sounds ultra real as well. So we had these synthetic instruments. So it sounded a bit like synthesizers with speakers were wandering around you at the same time. Oh yeah, that was pretty wild.
That sounds incredible. I want
Again, a lot of stuff I seem to get involved with is very I mean, I'm not being big-headed, but ahead of its time, but to my detriment, because really it should, if I'd done it a little bit later, it would
Be on trend.
be on trend and actually make money, possibly. Who knows?
I mean, part of being creative is always trying to getting excited by the next thing. That's the hard part about this. Trying really being a creative artist is like, by the time something is popular, it's like, this is boring.
By the way, Cherub, you're not pregnant, are you?
Not yet. Nearly. I know this jumper would suggest otherwise, but no.
This is one of the immutable rules. Whenever I do one of these Zooms, the fucking Amazon driver turns up at the front door. I'm not answering it. It's right. I can leave it. Right. So we are now. I want to talk about your interaction with the natural world, which fascinates me because I'm in that space. As you probably know, I'm involved with a charity called In Place of War, which actually, you know them, don't you?
I'm on the artist advisory board for In Place
There
of
you
War.
go.
I don't know.
There you go. So yeah, I've been on a couple of their albums, which have had access to all that shit. The sound recordings, natural world recordings, done some of my own, and creating new works out of the natural world. Tell me how your fascination with this emerged.
Yeah, it came from, it's funny. It came from a much more, it came from the climate action. So a friend of mine founded an organization called DJs for Climate Action. Sammy Bananas founded it back in 2012. And I was very quickly drawn to it. Like as a DJ at that time that was on flights every weekend, hadn't really thought about the negative impacts, right? I was kind of just like, this is amazing. I get to fly around the world and play music. So to like be made aware and like presented with an opportunity to, at that time, offset, buy carbon offset credits for the amount I was flying was something I immediately was like, oh, this is great. I had been involved with like environmental activism when I was younger. And it just kind of, lost that path as music became my real passion and took over my whole life. But I immediately was like, this is something that's important, especially as somebody who's traveling on airplanes so much. So I got very involved with DJs for Climate Action. And as that work progressed, I was one of the higher profile DJs who was also talking about that stuff. And I was asked to speak on a panel at ADE Green. So Amsterdam Dance Event has like a green programming day on the Friday of ADE every year. And it was a great experience, and I got to share my experience as an artist working on this stuff. But I realized like I was, I felt kind of imposter syndrome almost immediately. Like I don't know what to talk about.
You're explaining my life, Eli. I am a constant imposter.
Right. It's always like, what do I need to learn so I can actually be the expert that I want to be in the space? And so I started looking at potential master's programs to become an expert on climate science, climate policy. And funnily enough, at the college, the beautiful like liberal arts college near where we live in upstate New York, they had a master's program in climate science and policy. So this was I started looking into, this was like fall, winter 2019. I visited the program, and then the COVID pandemic happened. And I was like, that was March. And the deadline to apply to the program was like March, like soon after everything shut down because of COVID. And I'm like, well, I can't go on tour. Now is the time. I was thinking like maybe in a year or 2, 3 years, I would apply to the master's program. Luckily, the timing was perfect. I applied, I got in, and I spent the next, 2.5, 3 years, getting my master's degree in climate science and policy. So,
Wow.
yeah. So this was like with the idea of doing more like greening the music industry, greening the electronic music industry. I wrote my thesis on a voluntary climate agreement or pledge in the music industry. Started working on that, and just kind of quickly realized that it wasn't feeding my creative spirit in the way I needed to be fed. Like Zoom meetings and focusing on that was fine when that was all we could do. But once the world was there again, talking to people around the world virtually, while inspiring in one way, was not feeding my spirit.
No, I understand all that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess I could also say that like we moved to upstate New York in 2019. My daughter was born in 2018. She was actually born up here, and me and my wife and had been spending time up here, but had not made the move. So we decided to move up here full time in 2019, which was also serendipitous because it meant we were not in a city when the pandemic happened. So we had a lot of space, and still a somewhat social life here outside.
Right.
So that was a blessing. But being up here, I started, immediately I had never lived outside of a city before. So like, apart from a few days here, a few days there, even like going on holiday as a kid, like my parents, we would just go to cities. Like they loved Europe. We were in Europe. They loved going and look to the museums. Like, so I didn't really get this experience until I lived here. And immediately just like, nature and plants got into me and started, calling me. So that kind of combined with feeling burned out on the technical side of climate work, I, started getting much more inspired by being out in nature. So growing plants, growing food, and also, simultaneously like finding musicians that were bringing nature into their music and getting inspired by that as well.
Oh, great. And do you do
So that was how I found nature, or nature found me.
excellent? Did you get into field recording?
So I've done a lot of experimentation with field recording. More recently, finally, I've been really curious for a while, but finally experimenting with biosonification. So taking the electrical impulses from plants and using that as generative to generate sound on synthesizers, which is really exciting and fun and a new great way of experimenting. And so I just like I've kind of tried all of it. And also, I have this bigger project, or a couple bigger projects I'm working on. I guess bigger art projects. One is to actually grow sound, grow plants, but growing them specifically for the sounds that they make. So you could go to
Rewind.
Hang on.
This needs a bit more examination. So, growing organic entities for the sound they make. Is that what
Yes.
you're saying?
So finding, plants that have different ways of making sound, whether that's grasses, the wind that blows through grass. Yeah. Through the grasses, whether that's trees or other, native plants that are attracting birds. So you can kind of have an area that's like really focused on how to bring the most birds there and how you can listen to them in a intentional way. Plants that have different kind of seed pods that when they drop the seeds and dry out, you can shake to make.
Yes, got those. I use those in my singing circles.
Right. Like so
Nature's rattles.
Nature's rattles. So just like water, right? Water makes amazing sounds. How do you cultivate water on the land in different ways that you can then experience and record intentionally? So that's a bigger project. I think that's like my long-term project. And like as we're actually getting ready to move to a new house, and that's like part of the move was having land where that experimentation can happen.
I love that. I think that's where I'm at right now. It comes up in every podcast, but I've moved from living in cities my whole life too, and now I live in South Oxfordshire by the river, and we've got no neighbours basically, and we're just surrounded by nature. And I'm outside all day, and I can hear all the different sounds of nature around me, like that high grass, like you just said, like in Gladiator, when he moves his hand across the grass. I can hear that, and at a certain point every day, there's some deers that live behind the house in the greenery, and they move from one section to another. And the way that they move as a group through all the green shrubs and stuff, and then onto the path and to the trees, I listen out for it, and I'd love to record that. Maybe I should get into field recording because there's no other sound like it.
And it's very easy to do nowadays. I mean, literally. The only thing to worry about with field recording is moving air, so wind ruins a lot of those recordings. Otherwise, the microphone that's in an iPhone is pretty good actually. It's only more.
Really?
Oh yeah. So if you can put a wind socket around the end, it's not too bad. Obviously, if you can afford it, buy a Zoom or whatever, or some kind of portable recorder. It's really straightforward. I can lend you some. I've got a couple anyway.
Oh, thank you. There's so many sounds here. I'll give them to you, Martin. You can do some.
I want to use them as well, so it's a bit selfish.
So what I'm using, what I'm trying right now, what I'm going around like, in nature with biosonification and like listening to the impulses of the different plants. It's like I'm like planning on getting a multi-track field recorder so I can record the ambient sound of the space.
Yes.
And mix it live with the electronic sounds being generated by the impulses of the plant.
Yeah, we've got an 8-track Zoom.
Yep.
Which we use when we're serious about it. Do you have a 3D microphone?
I don't have a 3D microphone. No, I haven't thought about that.
You need to get one, man. Or you can get ones that are really quite small now. I bought one and it was about £1,000, I think, 10 years ago. It'd be a lot more now, probably. And that records everything in 3D, right? But you can also, you know about the binaural recording in-ear headphones, right? That they're really good. Again, wind is the issue, but so that's a bit more difficult. But I strongly recommend getting a 3D mic because you can record in ambisonic B format and you can incorporate that into your own recordings in installations. Do you do installations?
No, I haven't. I haven't. Like, this is all still very new to me. Like, I'm still figuring out the way like that I'm gonna put this out there, right? Like, I've been doing so much experimenting, but it's been more about the process the last couple of years.
Right.
So my question is, what's the product gonna be?
We've been doing. I was at where you're at now 25 years ago. I thought, oh God, I'm getting a little bit disillusioned with the pop or whatever you call it rock world. Need what's coming next, and decided it was 3E sound, and we developed a system, blah blah blah. We're still using it now, so it shows that it was well designed. And but with the stuff that's taught me, because it's the original processing of ambisonics is all about replicating reality. That's the guiding principle. So it's perfect for field recordings. If you can record in 3D, it records in ambisonic, in ambisonic B format. So you can actually that actually folds down into what is just looks like a normal stereo WAV. In fact, it splits into 4 channels. Like they do the encoding of Dolby Atmos or whatever. It's a similar thing. So it's encoding and decoding at the other end. So you can combine multiple immersive recordings, and then it's just a matter of the beauty of ambisonic B format is you can decode it into any shape of space for exhibitions or concert halls or in the open air or in a forest. We did a big thing in Leicester Square in London and one in Trafalgar Square, and so I'm passionate, and that's led me to a big, very strange, and some would say somewhat boring obsession with civic planning and the beautification of the urban experience. Because
Beautification of the urban experience.
because there's not much you can do about it, but the people who can do something about it, i.e., sound designers, can beautify sound environments. It's not always about being quiet and hearing nature. Want to bring nature into the city,
I mean, that's essential. It's like anything in this moment that we're in now, it's like anything that can help anybody connect more deeply and like remember that we're all part of this interconnected web. It's a lot easier when you're living outside of a city, but it's equally, if not more essential, to bring this to people in cities because the majority of the Earth's population now lives in cities.
And that it's going to be more like that. There was a very interesting conference I went to over 20 years ago now, and it was talking about what is a park in the future. As originally, parks were designed as a stress relief mechanism for workers in cities, right? It was to. It's a nice thing to do, and we just, it's a given for people who live in cities, right? But I tell you what, if you live in a city where there's no greenery, I mean, where I grew up in Sheffield is one of the greenest cities in Britain. Where I used to live in Primrose Hill in London, I'm surrounded by parks. I moved to Marylebone, next to Baker Street. It took me 6 months before I realised there were no trees within walk at all. Nothing. There are no boulevards, nothing. So I'm going, oh, fuck, I should really get out of here. So I have moved to a nice part now.
Yeah.
So it's water and greenery is very important. But the sound, well, let's get back to the sound for a second. Have you had any experience with sound healing?
I have had experience going to sound healing ceremonies, yes. I've never been a healer. But yes,
Like
up here there's like there's a
Music is healing.
I guess that's true. I mean, the music DJing, I do think like it's a responsibility, or I look at DJing as like I'm always focused on bringing a positive vibration to the people that are there dancing.
That is sound healing, the definition of it.
That is. I guess what I mean is like when I think of like, up here, there is a big community of sound healers and different kinds of sound healing events as well, and ceremonies. So I have been lucky enough to get more into that over the last 5 years living here, for sure.
So the hypnotic nature of, say, drone music, ambient. Another form of hypnotic music is dance music that evolves over time. So I don't delineate between sound healing having to be calm and fucking whale song, and I'm not going down that path. Although I do make some music like that. I think good dance music at its best, at its shall we say, for me, less aggressive and more considered, is just as healing and as life affirming as anything you can possibly do that's based, that sounds like, Vangelis on a trip,
Yeah, I mean, I would say like any genre of dance music has a pure vibration that is healing, right? Like whether even that's drum and bass that can be aggressive, like there is a flavor, there is a vibration of drum and bass that is extremely healing, like like when can be boiled down to like the bass and the beat.
Yes.
And I think like a lot of it depends on intention, right? Like if intention is just like making the most popular song, it might not be as healing. But I think and I think maybe any music, like to go beyond just dance music, right? Like every music has this pure vibration that can heal, which is amazing.
Exactly. And I think that the reason why there's been such a surge in interest in sound healing across the music community recently is because people who rave, who have shared that sense of collective euphoria on the dance floor, and it bonds people. It's an unwavering bond that we all feel across space and time. And that's something that we all share, that universal language of the medicine of music. And people in that rave scene and culture are starting to slowly merge over into sound healing because they realize that they need that sense of community and oneness. And whilst sound healing back in the day when I first got into it 15 years ago, very esoteric, a little bit exclusive in a way, not so connected to any other culture outside of the spiritual community. Now, sound healing is kind of having its moment. And we just did a Fabric residency, a monthly residency at Fabric, where we were actually blending both worlds of sound healing and electronics with our rave mates in Fabric Room 1. So it's amazing to see that people decide to pay attention.
I wish I was there for that.
I will fly you over for the next one. Come and play with us.
We similarly, like we organized a festival here last year called Future Sound of Nature.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about this. Tell everyone
We're
about
not
it.
together, but like one of the important elements was a ambient drone stage next to a creek. So you add the sound of the water and the sound of the performance, and then it rained a lot. So you also had the sound of the rain.
Right.
And so that was like a really powerful part of it, bringing in that element to it, the more vibrational and nature oriented music.
Isn't the strapline to the festival just called We Are Nature?
We are nature, yes.
I love that. Yes, we are.
Back to this idea of like giving people opportunities to remember that we are actually all nature. We're all part of this connected web. It's not like us acting on nature. It's not like us acting on each other or, being separate. We are actually all.
Yeah, and I think that this is what's interesting about turning music and the platform that you have, making it semi-political in a way, and pushing for social change via your influence as a producer and a musician. That's, I think, everybody's responsibility now to start using their platforms and their skill set and pulling together resources, which is kind of why we started SoundPower, to gather the tribe so that we can all start to push this message for social change through the healing and transformational power of music.
Well, you should be a politician, Cherub. You're very, you're very good at summing things up in short form. But
I'm sure you'd be a lot better than most of the MPs right now in your government.
fucking let's not get onto politics.
No.
I definitely have the most colourful suit in the room as well.
I mean, I'm heavily involved in political activism, and it simultaneously feeds my soul and destroys my will a lot of the time. It's a really strange dichotomy. But anyway, in today's world, anyway, let's talk about so you promote social justice, it says on your bio. So how does that manifest itself apart from your green credentials?
Well, I think like in a dance music context, a lot of it is educating about the history, about the the marginalized and Black and brown communities that created the music that we all now get to enjoy and make a living from. So the education part, then also like we have our House of E-Funk parties that we do, started in Detroit and do them in many other cities, and just like making sure we're always booking like the OGs of those cities or of other cities to make sure they have the platform and also can get paid doing the music. I think especially like, as dance music's gotten so popular, a lot of the originators have been forgotten, overlooked. The history is not quite as important to the social media algorithms as it was to us when we were coming up, learning about it, learning about DJing, learning about the creators.
You mainly usually use vinyl, or
I still play a lot with mostly with records. Yeah, I love records. So yeah, the history part being important, and also platforming and supporting the originators. And then also like I've worked with various organizations on social justice work, like In Place of War, like in my hometown of Cambridge, organization called Loop Lab that was basically providing education in music, video, audio production for underprivileged, mostly Black and brown kids in Cambridge, where I grew up. So that was
Cambridge.
Yeah, the other Cambridge.
Oh no, I mean no, Cambridge in where you come from, and I was shown around MIT by a friend of mine who was like head of music at MIT, and they were showing me all their top secret, kind of research things and nanotechnology and all this stuff, and it was like
MIT is really cool. I actually went to, when I was in high school, the MIT students would throw raves in the tunnels underneath. There's like this vast tunnel network underneath MIT. Out of like the chemistry labs and like the science labs are like in these secret tunnels. And so like, of course, the chemistry students who are down there making psychedelic potions, like, let's throw parties in laboratories. I want to go to that. You kind of sneak in and get into, it wasn't like big things, 50, 100 people. And remember one of them, they put like aluminum foil all down a hallway. So like the vibration of the beat were just like the whole place was vibrating.
Wow.
It was extremely trippy to be in there.
Have you ever played in a cave?
I've never played that. I know that there's that cave in Ibiza that they used to have after parties. I never played there. I went to a party there. I don't think I've ever played in a cave. I would actually be a little concerned about the ecological, now that I know better, maybe concerned about
Bats, isn't it?
ecological impact of loud bass in a cave.
We played with M17. We played in a cave in Derbyshire, which is just south of Sheffield, called the Devil's Arse, believe it or not. And it holds about 700 people, and it's amazing, fantastic acoustics, because the walls are all irregular, so it breaks the sound. And I did think about that when we were playing there. And the other thing was, I was recently in Sardinia, and we went in this beautiful little town in the mountains, a tiny town, like, 10,000 people or something, or less. And we went into this jewelry shop, and this woman said, they saw my son and daughter were like late 20s, and said, "Oh, what are you guys doing? Yeah, how long are you here for?" I said, "A couple of days, that's all." He said, "Oh, you got to go to this nightclub. It's in a cave up in the mountains, and it's like really popular." And she was obviously an ex tripping hippie, and
We all.
yeah, I know you are. Yeah, I just realized I've never seen you dance, Cherub. I've never seen any video of you dancing. I bet you can dance.
We need to start going out more, Martin. I mean,
No,
those days aren't behind us.
I've paid my dues. Don't worry. I've done my time in the trenches. Clubs. Those days, I think, are history. But anyway,
Well, you're DJing at my wedding, apparently. So
I am DJing
Dancing
at the wedding. We're still up for it. Yeah.
of course.
Okay, so on my list of things to ask, we're getting. Hold on one sec. I've lost my notes, of course. I'm very interested in how you. What's coming next? You seem to be a bit of an innovator, so obviously you're very engaged in this nature stuff. Is there going to be more of that and less of the kind of stuff that pays the bills, or?
Get that on your bio, Eli. Bit of an innovator. Direct quote from Martin Ware.
From Martin Ware. Well, it's finding this balance, right? I also have 2 young children, so it's finding this balance between family time, paying the bills, and creative experimentation, I guess. I guess there's the other piece of it is the activism. That's also really important to me, for nature, for the community is just essential. And so actually before I got on with you all, we had our first preliminary meeting for Future Sound of Nature Festival 2026. So we took this year off. There was too much other stuff going on. And the festival, sustainability is not just about not having any plastic and having everybody carpool. It's also about organizing a festival sustainably, both financially and with our time and mental health. So we decided to take a year off. But we are very excited to be back for 2026. So, planning that is a big thing, but also building or continuing to work on this, experimenting, figuring out what the product is with this nature music stuff that I've been working on for the last couple of years. But also, growing at, like I said, we're moving to this new place. So stewarding that land and growing food and plants and sound.
Sound.
It's like the Wild West pioneers being sound and in the physical world. It's like a new planet. I love it. And look, Avatar 3.
Humans have always grown plants for, ecological purposes, for aesthetic purposes. I don't think the sonic purpose of plants is often thought about in what plants we grow and where and why. So it's a new exploration, which is exciting.
Yeah, have you sonified the activities within trees?
I have not figured that one out yet. That's a harder one because the thicker wood does not support the electrical impulses in the same way.
So you'd have to.
It does conduct electricity in the same way.
It would be intrusive.
Yeah.
But if there are some trees where the sap, for instance, just
Right.
that, like maple trees and to a certain extent. So maybe
It's a great thing because there's a lot of maple trees here, and a lot of people tap and produce maple syrup from their trees. So we have maple trees on the land. So
Wow, cool.
tapping them sonically in the spring, late winter, spring, when they are releasing the sap would be really interesting. Will be really interesting to explore. But then there's this other thing that's also related to Future Sound of Nature, which is building a greenhouse that's also like a space for experimentation with plants, and a internet radio station that will like feature music collaborating with about the plants and workshops about this stuff as well. And a place to kind of broadcast this like extended music generated by the impulses of the plants, experimenting with that, mixing that with the ambient sound of the greenhouse and the land around the
I
greenhouse.
love this. Yeah.
So that's kind of becoming like the hub central.
Look at it as a 24/7 kind of internet station.
That's the idea. We'll see how possible it is. I think, just like weather wise, it gets very cold in the winter. So it may be like a setup and run sometimes and then take it down at other times. I think the first step is building it. Like originally the idea was like to go all out, right? Like build a big greenhouse, and do all at once. But I've kind of, I think, learned over time and like luckily remembered that often the best way to do something is step by step. So starting with a small kind of lean-to greenhouse off of our house, and going to see where that takes us.
Wow. This is really very clever stuff. I mean, also, it doesn't feel too kind of hippy dippy. It feels kind of necessary in a way,
This is why it's called Future Sound of Nature, right? Like there are plenty of festivals that kind of are like crunchy granola, that bring people together about plants or about healing, about yoga, about folk music, all super important and have played such an essential role in our growing our understanding of this. Future Sound of Nature, the word future, it's about electronic music and how electronic music can bring us closer to nature, right?
That's nice.
Which, to some people may be a contradiction, electronic. But however, as we see, electricity pulses through everything, gives us life, powers our nervous system, powers the plants. So like it is essential and also a way to bring in a whole new, and like you were saying, Cherub, like, bringing in our extended community of ravers and people who love electronic music who maybe weren't thinking about the health and healing side because we're just, have been ravers our whole lives. But here's a way to get people into that health and healing side and closer to nature and taking care of themselves and each other in new ways. And I think that's why, it's great that you noticed that, Martin, because that is so much of what we are trying to do.
Yeah, well, I think also there's a couple of things that are on my list to ask you about that I haven't addressed yet. One is, have you considered, or do you ever use kind of, I hate the term world music, but music from different cultures around the world and incorporate it into your work? I know it kind of is by default because everything ultimately comes from what we're talking about. Dance music comes largely from Africa, but I'm talking about maybe Far Eastern rhythms or gamelan or fucking Inuits tapping steel bones or whatever it is.
Overtoning.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Scientific throat singing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I love all of it. It all inspires me. It's not something I've brought into the music yet. I'm open to those collaborations. I think it's really cool. Like, in Place of War, sending, Bicep going to, was it Greenland or Iceland? But like all the way up north.
Greenland, yeah.
Greenland, to collaborate with indigenous artists there with sounds around them. I think this is like an essential piece of this, telling stories of the communities that are the most at risk to kind of inspire us to do what we can to support them from afar. Even if that's just changing some of our daily habits to try to protect the planet. But I think it's always really inspiring. When I DJ, I bring in a lot of different
Right.
sounds into the music.
I love that you just said that because you've obviously gone so deep into the facilitator and curator of events side of how to create sustainable events. But what I was thinking earlier is, if you think about the people on the dance floor, what daily things can they be doing? What can they take from these podcasts where they can start to make small changes in their life to contribute towards a better environment?
Yeah, I mean, like the biggest thing is being real with yourself about like consumerism, consumption. Like I think that is at this point, like our biggest impact as humans is like ordering online stuff that gets delivered to us, made in China and then delivered to our door like daily. That impact is so vast. And like a big thing for me in my learning has just been like, how do I not do that? How do I buy less? How do I use things around me? And instead of like, here's something that I want or even that I need, I'm going to go right now on Amazon and buy it. I put it on a list and I wait until I'm out in the world and I find especially things that I want and not need. Like that's the thing is like being able, can you recognize like what is something you want and what is something you need? And like it can be a really fine line, but like doing that work, and the more you start, the more you think about it, the more things you realize you just want and don't.
It makes perfect sense. How many children do you have? Just one?
I have two, a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old.
Yeah, wait till they get a bit older. You'll change your mind.
I mean, already the 6-year-old.
They'll be on Amazon 24/7.
All the time.
I know. No, I'm teasing. Yeah. Okay, this has been instructional and very life affirming for me, because to hear people who are involved in a lot of listen, I've interviewed a lot of DJs and some of the top DJs in the world. Some of them have been severely burnt by their drug taking experiences and their in their lives, and they've not come out of it at the other end very well. Some people are really, everybody's doing it because they're providing entertainment, so that's a good thing. But it seems to me that you're a very level-headed, right-minded person. So those people are getting harder to find.
I'm grateful that I found the path. I've had really incredible people in my life, my wife, my partner, it's like, happened early on in the DJ career and really helped. They really helped. Grounded, which was like, I'm so grateful. I see so many of my DJ friends who have just been searching for love their entire career, and it's very hard to find once you're already in that spin cycle of
so transient, isn't it? It's so hard to connect when you're in a different country every 3 days.
People love in all the wrong places.
Yep. No flat girls, just ugly faces.
Okay, we always finish these with a couple of questions that we ask everyone. So it's kind of an insight thing. Who's your favorite composer? It can be film composer or classical composer or I don't know, anybody, jazz composer.
Yeah, I probably have to say Pharoah Sanders. I don't know how much of a composer he is because he's, the free jazz is what's so inspiring about him.
Right. I'm not familiar with him. Can you explain a bit more?
So I was gonna say John Coltrane, right? John Coltrane, like Pharoah Sanders is from that kind of lineage of jazz. Like John and Alice Coltrane, exploring spiritual jazz, bringing in modal scales into their music, spirituality, finding like, a lot more of that meditation, Indian music into jazz in the 60s and 70s. Yeah. And then Pharoah Sanders, I would say maybe is a disciple of Coltrane. He was played sax with Coltrane, saxophone player, all saxophones, flutes, experimenter, who really led the push into more and more free realms of spiritual jazz. Jazz with less structure and more tone and meditation to it, 20-minute improvisations, and music for peace, specifically, many songs that include prayers, both in the title and the music being played, are also lyrically for peace and deeper.
Oh,
Oh, did you lose my mic?
no, I can still hear you. Just lost. I've just
That's something.
you lost vision. That's all.
Yeah, Pharoah Sanders inspiring this deeper connection to the spirit was really important, and something that I listened to young, but appreciate for the music, but only now can appreciate for the deep spirituality of that.
I'm trying to imagine growing up with that stuff and regarding it as just like a normal part of your environment, as opposed to coming to it as an adult when you got a bit more musical experience. Because I often think, I mean, I'm lucky. I used to have I used to live in Venice for a long time, and I brought my children up there from only maybe 5 or 6 weeks a year, but and I now think what effects that kind of different kind of well, majorly different kind of environment had on them at that formative neuroplastic age. And I think the same must have been for you with jazz. It sounds like it anyway. Okay, next, because
Psychedelics a little bit.
yeah.
Perfect combination.
Yes.
And what's the favorite of your own work, you think?
That's I think like the most recent Soul Clap album, WTF, World Transformation Force.
Cool.
Like the production, being at a much more better level with our production skills, especially Charlie and like all the playing he did on that album.
We should get Charlie on the podcast.
You should, yeah. And just like really trying to bring in messages into that music, all the information for us, right? Like, how can we have a positive impact? As we were writing the music, as we were writing the lyrics, that being something that we intentionally did. That was the first time that we did that. We set out to do that in writing a body of music.
Weapons of mass affection.
What's that?
Weapons of mass affection.
Weapons of mass affection. Yes.
Anyway, that's great. Another question I ask everyone is there a moment in your musical life experience where there's like one transcendental kind of epiphanal kind of moment? It could be a chord change, or it could be a swell, or it could be a moment of peace, or just something that you remember. It didn't have to be one of your own work. It could be somebody else.
I mean, well, there was, the experience I mentioned of going to a rave for the first time, like just that vibration of that musically and energetically. But just from like listening to music, like the intro to Goldie's Timeless album. I don't know if that jumped, if you immediately can hear it, but it's just this extended string pad opening that just opens into this like soundscape that then becomes the song Inner City Life.
Yes.
It is just the most beautiful and dark and emotional and just powerful moment as like, a teenager still getting into all the different sounds, like that, having that sound experience, in my bedroom, putting that on for the first time and just being brought into that. It's like that to me is like the beauty of electronic music, right? Is like sums it up in one track. And that also is a 15-minute track because it's in movements. You have like the intro into Inner City Life into Pressure. So you have these 3 different movements of it, the beauty into the tension into the release is just like, I don't know if it's, I don't know if there's anything that even touches that.
Oh my God, beauty into tension into release. That is literally the flow and structure intuitively of our sound journeys when we perform. Beauty, tension, release. That's it. That's the format.
Well, we've come to the end. This has been really a beautiful episode, actually.
Yeah, it really has. Thank you.
We are clearly on a similar wavelength. Excuse the pun.
Yeah, with the combination of everything that you're doing, it really is music for medicine in the modern times. It's what the people need. Keep bringing it. We'll keep.
Thank you so much for having me and talking about this stuff and bringing this out to as many people as we can. And I really hope we can all collaborate on something.
Oh, let's do it. If you ever need to do any more 3D mixing,
I'm really curious about this, like 3D recording, 3D. Like I think that's kind of an essential element as we're talking about it, to take this all to the next level, especially like growing these sound environments to then be able to record them in 3D is going to be an essential part of it.
I think it would be amazing. Just a final thought. I once did this project with an artist called Fenez, who's like one of the people in Asgard of this electroacoustic world, more experimental. And we did a big 3D sound exhibition in a huge square in the center of Mexico City, in front of the Opera House, which is like 200 meters square. It's fucking. And we installed a huge 3D sound system, and we invited 12 different artists to create 2-hour pieces based on the sound of Mexico City. And his take on it was it had to be connected with something in Mexico City. Most people did like mariachi bands and stuff like blah blah blah. He chose to record the sound of a snail crawling out of the gardens, because it's part gardens, part paths, crawling out of the gardens onto the path after a thunderstorm, and then blew it up to this like 50,000 times. So it was like a giant snail crawling across the square. The sound of the slithering and the absolutely mental. And
Slithering. Oh.
so it shows you. We've just been talking about micro recording. Who was it?
Yeah, on a recent podcast. Yeah, I know it was about the ants in the house or the mice or something, wasn't it?
Yeah. So this is really relevant to what you're talking about, Eli. Anyway, it'd be great to collaborate on something, because we're all aiming in the same direction, and I definitely got expertise in what works and what doesn't in 3D. Yeah. If you need any advice as well, let me know.
Yeah, I think like that story you told too, just like a final point of that overarches a lot of this, is like so much of this work, as you get more into like the spiritual side of sound and art and creativity, is making the space to have those like coincidences and inspirations from the world around us.
Yes.
Like the fact that he saw the snail, realized that it was making enough noise for him to record, meant that he was just so present in that moment. Yes, like that was the art becomes like presence as a human in the world around us, and I think that's so beautiful.
I think
I'm listening.
That's a good way to end the podcast, I think. So thanks, Eli. This will be coming out in the next couple of weeks, so we should stay in touch, definitely. And if you ever come to London, hit us up, and we'll definitely meet up.
I may be coming to London in October, so
Oh shit!
We see you there.
Definitely, I'll let Cherub organize that then.
Yeah, waiting on a confirmation, but would be like that last weekend of September, first weekend of October. So I may be able to stay a day.
Oh, cool, man!
Brilliant.
Oh, I'd love to treat you to dinner or lunch or something. That'd be nice.
Yeah, be great to meet up.
All right, man. Thank you.
Thanks, Eli.
Thanks, Cherub. Thanks, Martin.
Bye.
Bye.